Do you believe in UFOs, astral projection, mental telepathy, ESP, clairvoyance, spirit photography, telekinetic movement, full trance mediums, the Loch Ness Monster, and that there could possibly be a way to save this franchise? There's a steady paycheck in it. I'll believe anything you say. So, this is kind of a weird one to talk about in terms of timing-wise, because it's not really relevant anymore. But you know what? It was on my mind. So I saw a piece where Paul Feig, who directed the 2016 Ghostbusters, said that he would actually really like to make a sequel. He said that, a little more than a year ago, when it started to become clear that there was probably not going to be a sequel, but he stood by it and he's kept saying it, and he said some other things that has actually made me go, well, should there be one? And if there is, should he direct it? Because I don't think it's as clear-cut as a lot of people make it. Now, to refresh people's memory, because I've got way more subscribers than I did back when I reviewed that film. Got it. I was still using the green screen back then, good grief. So, the 2016 Ghostbusters, I had problems going in because it was a reboot. I didn't care that it was women. Actually, I think that was kind of a neat twist on things. But I didn't like that they threw out the old continuity, especially because they didn't seem to be any need to do that, to tell the kind of story they were going to be telling. So I had that issue going in. Seeing the movie to the end, it didn't justify being a reboot, so that didn't work for me. But it's not a bad film. It's okay. It started clicking for me towards the end, basically through the climax, when it had more legitimate of an action sequence, like in Times Square, than Ghostbusters usually has. I dug that. I liked the character of Patty. I liked Holtzman. The other two were okay. They were fine. They were decent enough. I liked Kevin, the secretary. I thought that was kind of a fun flip around on things. And it wasn't awful. It's something that you could build off of. And the things that Paul Feig has said since the release of that film makes me think it might be worth letting him try to build off it. Now, before I say this, this is not based on any presumption that they will make a sequel. I think that is incredibly unlikely. To my way of thinking, the only way Sony even considers a sequel to Ghostbusters is if Venom tanks hard and they go, well, crap, we still need a franchise. Let's see if there's any gas left in this Ghostbusters tank. Failing that scenario, and even that's a long shot, I don't see us actually getting a sequel to this. So this is all hypothetical. And I'm not going to lay out what I think they should do. I will say that I don't think that they should be trying to correct the narrative. I don't think they should try and retroactively make this no longer a reboot. Like that ship has sailed. So trying to go back and fix that, all you do is bring more attention to the fact that you screwed it up the first time. Move on from it, don't deal with it. So why do I think that it would actually be interesting to see Paul Feig take another crack at this? Well, it has to do with some of the stuff he said. Something that he's basically admitted to since that first film came out was that while he was a fan of the original Ghostbusters, he didn't understand the current fandom for it. And what I mean by that is there are kind of two sorts of Ghostbusters fans. There are people around Paul Feig's age, who were already adults when the original film came out. And for them, it was, wow, these guys from SNL made this really funny, kind of cool movie based off stuff that they liked. And, I'm not diminishing, their experience of watching it, but, they watched it and they absorbed it, and their take on it was, wow, look at these funny guys and these cool effects. This is kind of neat. But what he hadn't understood at the time he made the film was people my age who watched that film at a very young age and then steeped in Ghostbusters through the toys and the cartoons and the comic books and this continuation of it. We really came to love it and I don't want to say like at the same level, but like in the vein that people love Star Wars. So he did not understand that. He didn't appreciate that. So while he was a fan of the original, his fandom, his type of fandom meant that he approached it with an attitude and came at it from a position that basically ticked off fans like me. And he's admitted to not having understood that at the time he made the film. So he seems to have a better understanding to that now. And, you know, you would actually ask, well, if he has kind of admitted to not getting it in a way, why would he want to make another one? Well, part of it is he has really appreciated the reaction from people who did like it, and oftentimes he'll cite young girls who really enjoyed it. And, you know, it kind of tickled him when some of them dressed up as the Ghostbusters for Halloween, probably mostly as Holtzman, because Holtzman's awesome and it has the most iconic kind of a look thing going on. But he really appreciated it, enjoyed that. And more recent comments that I saw from him, and kind of got my wheels spinning about this, was he also admitted that turning the lead up to the whole thing into kind of an event and a cause was probably not the best choice. Now, that having been said, you know, the fact that some fans were very vicious, needlessly so, about the fact that they are women, and who attacked that specifically and went crazy about that. I'm not saying those people should have been placated, because they were going to hate on it no matter what at this point, once that decision was made. However, the film seemed to actively, in the process and the marketing and the behind the scenes stuff, seemed to be actively antagonizing them. And even though it's not a pretty part of the fandom, that was a part of the fandom, and there were fans who might have been more on the film side, but it seemed to be lumping together anyone who had an issue with the film in with the worst and loudest people who did have a problem with the film. And so they tried to, in a weird way, almost make it a rallying cry against this kind of toxicity. And while I can understand why that decision was made, it didn't endear the project. So, you know, when you do something that's going to tick off the fan base, or at least a contingent of it, and in general, I don't have a problem. You know, make your choice. Just be prepared to deal with it. Maybe it won't work. But, you know, it's one thing to make that decision and then sort of go, look, we understand not everyone's going to like this, but we feel it's the best decision. We hope when you see it, you'll agree. And it's another to start to make fun of people. And I understand that it's a tempting target, because again, some of those people who were complaining about that the Ghostbusters are girls now, and I swear I saw stuff on Reddit making arguments about how Ghostbusters could never be women because their physical makeup would not allow them to carry a proton pack. Like, it was stupid. And I don't have a broad inherent problem with mocking people like that, but unfortunately, it's the kind of thing where it's hard to make, to criticize or mock people like that with a scalpel. You tend to do it with a shotgun, and then, you end up hitting folks who maybe weren't that bad, but also were a little like, we have concerns, and you paint them all with the same brush. And it created a backlash that was bigger than what it would have been if they hadn't kind of poked the bear. And he's also basically fessed up to that. He said it was kind of a mistake to try and turn the film into a cause when it was just supposed to be a fun movie. I mean, that was what he set out to make. And how well he did or didn't succeed at that, that varies from person to person. But he didn't set out to make a cause, event, a rally cry movie, but it became that in the lead up. And he admits to having contributed to that, but he now says that probably wasn't a mistake. Now, why I think it would be interesting to see him take another crack at this is because it's not very often that we see corrective measures on a franchise being instituted by the filmmaker. Usually when you get notable, serious correctives on a series, they're usually studio mandates. So an easy go-to example, a big part of why Zack Snyder was brought in for Man of Steel versus any other director, and there was a big push for somebody like him, was they wanted action in Man of Steel, because a big part of the response to Superman Returns was that there wasn't enough action in it. So that was a corrective that was decided at the studio level. And anything that Paul Feig is saying is not reflective of Sony, because, as I said, Sony is making no indication that they're touching this property at all at this point. So it's obviously not, a studio mandate filtering down through this director. These are changes he would like to make. And it's not especially often that you have a director go, look, I tried this thing, it didn't work, I'd like to try again and do better. You actually don't find that all that often. Sometimes, that's not to say directors always crank out the same thing. They'll make changes, they'll make their adjustments, but they usually won't be this degree of open about what did or didn't work and what they hope to do better in the future. And I guess I feel it'd be kind of a shame to have this instance where a guy made a film that I think is fine. It's an perfectly okay film that he came out of and went, now that I have talked to people more and seen the reaction and kind of taken a step back from this, there was a lot of stuff I could have done better. Boy, it'd be nice to try again. I kind of want to see what would happen if he did. But like I said, we probably won't. We almost definitely won't. And I do feel that that's kind of a shame, because despite my massive hang-up about the fact that it was a reboot and there was absolutely no need for it to be a reboot, I don't like seeing properties that I enjoy fail. Sometimes I think it's necessary that they fail, because it's the only way to stop, some of the huge issues that might be going on with them. But I don't want them to. I don't like the idea that Ghostbusters is going to now be more of a footnote, because it now feels like a dead franchise, because the reboot isn't going to be continued, and there's no way they can continue the original, because we lost one of the actors, and the remaining ones, they're frankly a bit too old for it. I'm not going to say I ever got over the 2016 Ghostbusters being a reboot, but having basically processed that and accepted it as best as I can, I would like to see them try and do better. Try and have them be more their own thing, because that was another problem with that film, is by retelling the origin of how the Ghostbusters came together, it took longer to find its own groove than it should have, whereas they could come into a sequel with these character dynamics established, having a sense of what didn't work, and really leaning into that. And I think it's kind of a shame that won't happen. And I'm probably in the vast minority of that. Because again, I'm not even a huge fan of that film, but I know lots of people out there were doing a victory dance when that thing belly flopped at the box office. And at the time I was like, oh, okay. And now I feel like that's kind of a shame. But yeah, so those are my weird thoughts on maybe it would be kind of nice if it got a sequel, but it probably won't. So, just a random topic, something that came into my head. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think there should be a sequel? Would you prefer another reboot? God, I wouldn't. I would rather have it slip off quietly into the night than have another reboot, at least anytime soon. But you know what? Whatever your thoughts are, if you got a pitch, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all the stuff to do. Support me on Patreon, follow me on Twitter, blah, 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 blah. Links in the description. So until next time, this council's adjourned.